United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is I'm reading right off of the paperwork that everybody has. Special city council meeting for May the 12th of 2020. We will have a call to order, and that all councilmen are present at the moment outside of Richard Nielsen, which I think is going on Zoom. We do have the city engineer on, and we have the mayor here, of course, and we got the city administrator and also city attorney. Scott, you are on here, I'm hoping. I've seen you there. I believe
Yep,
we
I'm
covered,
here. I'm here.
everybody covered on it so far. So, and we also have a special guest with us tonight, and that is the chief of police, Lee Scholander. So we're ready to go. We're all in good hands here now. So citizens' comments, if there's any that anybody has, there's nobody here in the council room chambers. So I guess we can pass on that. We'll go on to adopt the agenda. Is there anything that needs to be changed on the agenda?
No.
Okay. We'll let it go as is then. We'll go to the consent agenda, and also we can add into the financial end of it too. We can vote at one time, but we need to have a motion on that.
So moved.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. John. To accept the consent agenda and the financial end of it. All in favor of it, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes pass.
So can everybody see the screen out there that I just put the audit cover page up?
Yeah. Yep.
If anybody has any questions or we need to go live, I can take this down, but I'm going to leave it on screen share at this point while Chris does his showing.
Also, I did make a mistake there. That was for approval of the minutes and appointments also that we should have had in there. Okay, we'll move along. Presentations, public hearings, recognitions, and proclamations. And we'll start out with number A, the 2019 audit summary. And who is it, Chris?
Chris can open.
Okay, Chris, are you on here?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, would you like to present what you got for us?
I'm more than happy to. First off, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Chris Knopik. I'm the principal on the city's audit engagement now this year as well. As we go through the presentation, feel free to interrupt if you can. Wave your hand, speak up, whatever you want to do to try to get my attention. I'll try to stop, and if we need to back up, that's fine. Otherwise, I will just periodically ask if there's any questions as we go throughout this. So Mark, if you want, you can move ahead to the next slide.
Just have to let me know, then I'll try to figure it out, but if not, just let me know to go to the next one whenever you
Not a problem. And if I'm going too slow, Mark, you can just speed me along by just changing slides on me too. That's fine too.
All right.
But as we go, first of all, we'll start off with just the audit results for the 2019 audit. I will go over at a high level of just what the overall required communications that auditing standards require us to provide. And then we do have several slides that are dealing with financial results for the city and its various operating funds, as well as the enterprise funds, including KMU in those ones. And then at the end, we do have a couple of additional accounting pronouncements and things like that that'll be coming down the pipeline here over the next couple of years. So if you want to slide to the next one. So as we get into the audit results, first and foremost, the city is receiving an unmodified or a clean audit opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that a auditing firm can provide any type of entity, regardless of whether you are a government, a nonprofit, or a publicly traded company. That's the highest level that you can get. This year, similar to other years in the past, we've had one significant deficiency for the city, and that's related to segregation of duties. And part of that is going to just be a natural limitation in the size of the city and in just the limited number of personnel you have in the main administration office there. So we didn't see any kind of a decline in segregation of duties or anything like that from the prior year. So everything's pretty much status quo as far as that goes. And then on top of that, the city has continued to make slight improvements on their segregation of duties, but there is just some of those natural inherent limitations just due to the staff size. This year, we also tested, as we have in the past, Minnesota legal compliance. We did have 2 legal compliance items that we noted this year as part of our testing. The first one was a contractor's withholding affidavit. And what that is that's a withholding affidavit that contractors are supposed to supply to the city before final payment is made. That, on one of the projects we tested, that was not obtained prior to final payment being made. And then the second one was related to collateral coverage. So if a city has a deposit with a financial institution in excess of $250,000 or that FDIC insurance, they are required to obtain collateral or have the bank provide collateral for that. And what ended up happening with that was the timing of when an interest payment on one of the city's CDs hit the bank account. So it caused you to be over that FDIC limit by just a little bit at year end. And that has already been remedied as well. So that one is cleaned up and you're back below that FDIC threshold there. And then, excuse me, as far as the required communications go for the city, the city council should have received as part of your packet of information for the audit tonight is the actual governance communication letter. And what that is just at a high level, it's that reminder that an audit provides reasonable but not absolute assurance on the numbers that are in the financial statements, which basically means that as an auditor, we're required to make sure they're materially correct. There are just some significant estimates involved in the financial statements. And for the city, the most significant ones for those are going to be your collectability, the receivables, the useful lives of capital assets, those types of things. And our responsibility for those estimates is really to make sure that they're reasonable and supported, and we did not have any issues with that. We also let you know if we adopted any new accounting standards for this year's audit, which we did not. And we also did not have any material audit adjustments as well. And finally on that last one, just no disagreements or no difficulties with management. We'd let you know if we had any of those way before a city council meeting like this. Then if you want to slide ahead, we'll get into some of the financial results for the city. The first group of slides is going to be looking at revenues for the city and some of the various funds. You want to slide one more slide up, Mark? There we go. And this first slide is looking at property taxes for the city. And in 2019, the general property tax levy was $927,000 or just under $928,000. And then in addition to that, there was also a levy out there for the PFA loans for the sewer fund as well. So combined, they were about $958,000 in total levy. And what this represents is about 40% of your total governmental fund revenues during 2019. And then you can see how in total what your tax levy has done over the last 6 years. You can see that has continued to increase year over year, which is the way that works for all cities that we work with. That levy continues to naturally increase. Looking at the tax increments on this one, you can see the city has one tax increment district in operation during 2019, which is consistent over the last couple of years as well. And as you can see, those tax increment collections have been very steady over the past 6 years as well. Basically, right around that 19,000 to 20,000 mark each year. So very consistent year over year. On the next slide, looking at local government aid. So this is another significant piece of revenue that the city receives on an annual basis. This, for 2019, it was just over $545,000 in local government aid. That was a slight decline or decrease from 2018. However, in 2018, the city received just about $17,000 in a one-time small cities assistance payment from the state of Minnesota as well. So that's why you are seeing a decline in that this year. And the local government aid represents another 23% of the city's total governmental fund revenues as well. So once again, this is another very significant piece of your revenues for the year as well. When we look at this next slide here, this is looking at both the local government aid and you do have some slight market value credits, but they're not very significant, but they are in there. And then as well as the property taxes for 2019, as well as the past 5 years on top of that. You can see that continual increase in trends. And property taxes in your local government aid combined represent just under 65% of your total governmental fund revenue. So it's about 2/3 of your revenues in the governmental fund. So it's a very significant piece of that. On this slide, what we're looking at is this kind of gives you a 6-year trend of where revenues have been going for the significant areas within the governmental funds. And you can see on here your local government aid is that far right blue column. Then you have your property taxes, as well as some special assessments, the charges for services and tax increments. So you can see where how these significant revenue sources have been trending over the last couple of years. Your property taxes, as we showed on a couple of slides previously, they are continuing to increase, and your local government aid had been increasing prior to the slight decline here in 2019, but that was related to that small cities payment that the city received last year as well. Before I move on to the expenditure side of some of the different operations for the city, any questions on any of the revenue side first?
Pardon?
Well, Richard, he's going through the audit now. So he's just on the expenditure, like on page 20, page 11, I mean.
Okay.
Okay.
Any idea what's happening with Zoom?
Well, if you called now, I've got it on screen share, so I've got the audit up, and apparently it didn't tell me that you were calling in. I don't know. I'm not really.
Yeah, it said there were 7 people in the meeting and that the host had put me on hold.
Yeah, it would come back in. It took me some time.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Charges for services. What are we talking about there?
Charges for services a lot of times are going to be building permits, license, or building permits are going to fall into there, some of those types of things.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Mark, if you want to move ahead a couple of slides now into the expenditure side.
Okay.
Okay, so the first slide here is looking at the general government's expenditures. So your general government for the city includes a lot of your administrative functions. It's the costs related to the mayor, the council, elections, administration, finance, legal, planning, zoning, the municipal building. Those are the types of costs that are included as part of general government. This last year, expenditures for general government, they increased just over $15,000, was about a 3.9% increase. And really what that was there was some increase in legal fees this last year, and then also some increases in employee services. So basically the cost of insurances and just a slight increase in salary costs this last year as well. Both the increase in those personnel or the employee costs, that's very typical. We see it in all of the cities we work with as far as the wages continue to go up, whether it's even just a cost of living, but then on top of that, just providing insurances continues to increase as well. Looking next at public safety, what you're going to see on here, these are going to be your police department, the fire department, and first responders. are what make up the majority of the public safety expenditures for the city. The police portion is just over 382,000, as well as fire is just over 100,000. And then your first responders are just a very small piece of this at just under $4,000. So your total public safety expenditures this year were just under $487,000 approximately. And really the biggest piece in that was a increase in your fire department cost, but that is really just the timing of when the local or the fire aid comes through from the city. In 2018, that state fire aid did not come during that year just because of the timing of when the Relief Association had their audit done and when that was submitted to the state. So that's essentially causing us to have to double up on expenditures during 2019 as those payments were remitted over to the fire relief. That was about a $30,000 increase in the fire cost this last year because of that. And then there was also some additional training in the fire department as well. It was about a $15,000 in additional training and things like that. So there were some additional retirements, which means you had to train some additional replacements as well. If you want to move on to the next slide, Mark. So on this slide, we're continuing to look at the public safety expenditures, but we're also comparing them to some of the direct revenues that those various functions are receiving as well. So we're including revenues outside of the tax levy that supports these operations. Your police expenditures did increase from last year, just under $8,000 this last year, mainly just due to increase in personnel costs. It was about just over a 2% increase there. Your fire expenditures did about $100,000. The biggest piece there was just the transfer out of $65,000 or just about $66,000 to capital projects. But then on top of that, the additional state fire aid passed through to the Fire Relief Association as well. The revenue side of fire operations, it was just under $106,000. So the largest majority of that is going to be the fire contracts, so the contracts with the surrounding communities. And then also the state fire aid, and then some additional just smaller pieces related to fire suppression, and then just under $1,500 of other miscellaneous revenues for the fire department as well. And then the first responders, it is a small portion of this, but there is some costs out there related to it. So it was just under $4,000 in cost, but there was about $4,500 in some revenue related to that, primarily just some special purpose donations for the first responders there. Looking at the public works expenditures for the city. So this is going to include the salaries, the benefits, repairs and maintenance, supplies, fuel, insurance related to everything in public works. Total expenditures in 2019 were just under $269,000. It was a decrease from last year of about $13,500. Really, the majority of that is just the timing of when street maintenance happens. You can have fluctuations in that just depending on the magnitude of the repairs that need to happen any given year. And then in addition, the general fund did transfer about $35,000 for capital projects, funds for some excess expenses under budget for street maintenance. So they did transfer some additional money into the reserve fund to help account for some of the future costs there, since it was under budget as well. Looking at sanitation and recycling, as this has gone over the last couple of years, your revenues are just slightly above your expenditures, which is basically what we'd expect. Your expenditures are your outside cost to the service provider for the disposal services. And then the city does have a little bit that it takes on top of that just for the administration of that aspect of it. So, in any given year, we would expect that just to be, pretty much break even to a slight increase on the revenue side. And you can see this year, similar to 2018, and in pretty much every year other than 2017, that's the case the way this has been. The next slide, looking at culture and recreation. As you can see on here, culture and recreation includes the parks, the swimming pool, the library, and the Gunderson House. And total expenditures during 2019 were just over $313,000. Very consistent year over year with what they were in 2018, which last year in 2018 they were about $300 higher than 2019. And just a note on here, this does exclude some of the capital outlay that is related to the pool as well. This year there was just over $16,000 in capital outlay related to the wading pool project that the city did during 2019 as well. But as you can see from the different colored bars on here, that the operations themselves were very consistent year over year. Looking at the library aspect of just the culture and recreation, so as the very top bullet, this is part of the culture and recreation function for the city. This includes everything for the library, from salaries and benefits, purchasing books and supplies, the insurance, the utilities, printing, all of the costs of operating the library. Expenditures during 2019 were just under $192,000. So you can see there was a slight increase of about $6,500. And similar to what we've seen in a lot of the other areas, the primary driver of this is just the personnel cost. That's just naturally increasing each year as employees continue to get increases for, even if it's just cost of living and also insurances, those types of things. Your property taxes during 2019 were $157,700. This was an increase of about $14,800 from 2018. So there was a slight increase in that. In addition, the library also received some additional aid from the county as well, and that was just over $36,000. So your total revenues for the library were about $197,500. And your expenses were just under that at about $192,000. So if you want to look at it, your library had a net income of about $5,600 this past year. So right on par with where we'd expect, that to be. You're not trying to make money on it, and you're not losing money on it as well. Looking at the economic development side, as you can see, this in 2018 and 19, you can see those expenditures have continued to increase. In 2019, that is just under $531,000 now. So it's an increase of $416,000 from last year. The biggest piece of this was a one-time pass-through money to the HRA of some deed grant money. There was just about $370,000 of pass-through money on there. And then in addition to that, there was some additional work completed by the EDA in the industrial park as well for engineering and some of the initial construction phases for that as well. So you can see that those are some significant increases, the majority of which was primarily related to that pass-through grant to the HRA. So looking now, this is looking at all of the governmental fund expenditures on a graph pretty much side by side over the last 6 years. And you can see where the fluctuations have been continuing to go over the last couple of years. As I mentioned previously, that orange bar on the far right hand of each of those years, the economic development expenditures, those of course in 2019 were significantly increased, primarily because of that HRA grant that was out there that passed through. Then in addition to that, some of the additional capital outlay, there was an F-150 capital lease that was about $29,000 in capital outlay out there. And then increases as well for a plow truck of another $229,000. So there's just some additional costs out there related to public works and culture and rec and economic development. So looking at the general fund, the budget to actual expenditures. So the total general fund expenditures were over budget by about $8,200 this last year, but it was within 1%. It was about 7% over budget, so very close in the general fund. The biggest pieces of what make up that difference was general government. As we mentioned, there was an increase in legal services this last year. Within public safety, there was the increase in the personnel expenditures. And then related to capital outlay, there's additional work outside of the budget related to the swimming pool, as well as the public works for security cameras and various other things within public works. But overall, very close to budget there, which is great to see. You want to slide ahead another? There we go. Looking at all of the other funds, some of the looking at the expenditures and looking at the budget to actual for that. So the fire fund expenditures, which is the left-hand side of this, they were actually under budget by $4,000. The biggest reason for this was there was some additional budgeting related to uniforms and things like that weren't used. So you ended up under budget by about $4,000. And then the library fund as well was under budget by about $4,600 as well. And really what that was is, even though there was an increase in wages and some of those personnel costs, they were still under what was budgeted. And then the materials, some of the material supplies as well were under budget by about $1,200 as well. So both fire and library were under budget, both by a little over $4,000 each respectively. Before I move into the reserves, any questions at all related to any of the expenditures or anything else I've previously mentioned? Doesn't look like it. Okay. You want to move ahead another slide, Mark? So looking at this this first slide, what we have here is looking at the percentage of reserves that the general fund has. And we focus mainly on the general fund here, just because that is the main operating fund for the city. In 2019, when we look at the expenditures as a percentage of fund balance, and in 2019, you were about 61%. And where we typically like to see most of our cities that we work with is somewhere right in that 50% range, maybe slightly over that, with the idea that you have enough reserves on hand to get you through that first tax settlement, which always happens late June, early July. And when we look at this and look at how does the fund balance reserves at the end of 2019 project into your budgeted expenditures for 2020, and it was about 57% of your budgeted expenditures in 2020. And really the biggest thing to know here, is you are over 50%, which is great. As I mentioned, that gets you to that first tax settlement. But in 2020, that's also a very important thing, because a lot of counties are delaying when property tax payments are due. So there is going to be a delay this year in the timing of some of those revenues. There's going to end up being an extra settlement. It's not going to be that same June, July settlement, and then a December, and then a January. There's going to be another settlement that's going to occur. I think it's going to be in September sometime, when you get an additional settlement, because a lot of counties are delaying the due date of when property taxes are due this year. So having these reserves is a good thing in this case, because you are not going to get that same level of property taxes that you've always seen in that June, July timeframe.
Yeah, Goodhue County's not doing that, but what they are doing is delaying penalties and interest. So it's possible there will be people, businesses that will pay later, but it's not an open dead end. The extension the deadline hasn't been extended, so.
And that's very typical, Mark, of what we're seeing is they're eliminating penalties and interest. And the way I've seen a lot of counties handle it is that if your property taxes are in escrow, those payments are still due by that May 15th timeframe. And if you walk into the county, you normally pay those taxes directly outside of escrow. They're not, as you mentioned, they're not outright extending the deadline, but they are essentially forgiving penalties and interest, which most people are going to take that as an extension to the deadline. So you will have a slight decrease, or a slight it's going to basically cause a slowness in when the timing of those payments are going to be. Okay, so if we move into the library fund, in 2019, the library fund, your ending fund balance was just over $59,000. That represents about 31% of your expenditures in that fund. So that's just under 4 months worth of expenditures is what you have there. It was a increase from 2018 as well, so that is good to see, building some additional reserves in there as well. Knowing that the library isn't as heavily funded by property taxes, it is not as crucial for that, and also knowing that the city can essentially, you know, one-time loan some money if there was anything in there as well, if you'd ever run into some significant shortfalls in there as well. And then revenues this last year did exceed expenditures, so that's what's causing the additions to your fund reserves there. Looking at the fire fund balance, as you can see in 2018, there was a large spike, and in 2019, you're back down to where you're historically or on average where you're at in there. In that 2018 spike is primarily driven more off of the reduction in expenditures that year since the timing of the fire relief payment. And why in 2019 now you're back down to where you're, you know, on average where you're at about 35% of your fund balance reserve there. In addition, the capital improvement fund also has just over $267,000 that's set aside for future fire projects as well. So this is not reflecting all of the reserves related to the fire department. The Economic Development Authority, their fund balance this last year, it is just over $48,000 at the end of the year. The biggest driver in this is, you know, some of the additional costs that were out there related to the EDA. There was also an adjustment to the market value of the land that the EDA has in there as well. And then on top of that, the EDA is also, they have an advance out there from KMU, and the EDA continues to make payments back towards that as well. So that's why you're seeing a decrease in the fund balance for the Economic Development Authority as well. Looking at the debt service for the city now, the next couple of graphs, there's a lot of information going on, and there's a lot of different bar charts in here. But as you can see, the debt, as we'd expect, you know, when there isn't any new debt in some of these areas, you're seeing that continual decrease in there, just with the pay down of the various bonds and things like that, whether it's the refunding bonds, the PFA bonds. You can see in the second group of columns from the right-hand side, that's the USDA bonds for the fire hall. So you can see that's now starting to get paid off as well, along with the far right-hand column is also related to the fire hall as well. If we want to move ahead to one more slide, this one, as once again, there's a lot of information on here, but this is all of the other miscellaneous debt for the city. A lot of these are reflecting the various advances that the city funds have, mainly from KMU. It's partially to the capital projects fund, to the liquor has a small advance out there, as well as the EDA also has an advance. And on top of that, the city also has several capital leases that are also reflected in here. And then the big one that sticks out there to everybody on here is the net pension liability for the city. And you can see that has now, for the most part, steadied itself compared to 2016 when you had that large spike out there, and then it dropped again. But 2018 to 2019 for Minnesota Para, which is this represents the city's proportionate share. This is they had a very good year in investments, so that helps control that liability as well. If you want to move on to the next slide, Mark. This is just looking at the debt service requirements for the city over the next 10 years. With 2019 actual out there, and it also breaks it down between governmental and business type activities as well. So you can see where that, and this only reflects bonds outstanding as of the end of December, but you can see where those payments are. Once you get through 2020, that's up around $400,000. And then for the 3 years after that, you'll drop down closer to that $325,000 range. And then after starting in 2024 and beyond, you're going to be down closer to the $250,000 range. So you can see how these are going to continue to stagger out there, assuming that the city doesn't take on any more debt currently. Looking at the next one, looking at the capital projects fund, as I mentioned, especially with the fire department, there is the capital outlay fund, which has some significant reserves in there, just over $831,000 for various projects that the council has committed the fund balance for. As I mentioned, there's $267,000 related to the fire, another $329,000 related to streets. General government has a little over $166,000, and then there's some various other departments that make up another $112,000 of various council committed funds for projects in the future as well. So you can see that you are setting aside some additional funds as well. Okay, the next several slides here are going to be looking at the utilities for the city. The first one here is looking at the water services or the water operations for the city. Very obviously, that very first bullet point, it's supported by the ratepayers. The last rate increase for the city was in 2015. Net income before the effects of the pension entries were just over $37,000 this last year. And then we started including what the effects of the pension adjustments were on an annual basis, primarily due to the 2006. If you remember back to that debt slide in 2016, where the liability took a huge increase, you can see that could have some impact on this. But in 2019, the overall impact was only just over $600 on here. So the water, it's fully covering depreciation, which is great. I can't say that for all of the cities I work with, so it's always good to be able to report that back as well, and you're able to hold those rates steady as well. Looking at the water, continuing to look at the water fund, this is just a comparison of the cash reserves in the water fund compared to what the outstanding debt is for the water fund. As you can see there, the debt for the debt at the end of the year was about $117,000 compared to your cash reserves of about $600,000. However, if you look back at that previous slide, your depreciation number is very small right now for the water fund. That's going to be that green bar that's out there as well. So, compared to what we see in other communities, your depreciation's not a huge piece of that yet. But as improvements continue to get made, expansion into the industrial park and anything like that depreciation is going to continue to get eaten up. But on top of that, having those additional cash reserves allow you to be able to do some of the smaller projects that you have kind of on your plans and on your docket without necessarily having to take on more debt at the time as well. If you want to go ahead, there you go, to the sewer fund. Once again, the sewer fund is primarily supported by the ratepayers. In 2019, there was about a 15% increase in rates. And in 2020, sorry, before I get into that part of it, the increase in rates is really helping to start get you back closer to break even in the sewer fund. In 2020, there was also an increase in rates of about 11%. So those increases were needed to start getting you back closer to zero. You can see starting in 2018 and it continued into 2019, that blue kind of turquoise colored bar, that's the far right hand side. You can see those were below zero. That's your net income or loss for sewer operations. You can see in 2018 that was pretty significant, and you've cut that down now in 2019 to just under a $20,000 loss. There is also some non-operating income related to that PFA tax levy of about $30,000. There's also a slight revenue source for some special assessments. And then also the increase in an increase in expenses by about $650 related to the pension effects, which result in that decrease of net position. And then after the transfers, as I mentioned, I think several slides ago, there was a transfer of about $64,000 into the sewer as well, which actually shows, if you look at the financial statements, essentially a bottom line net income of about $43,600 for the year. On this next one, once again, we're looking at what the cash reserves are compared to the outstanding bonds. The sewer fund does have substantially more debt out there than the water side of it. As you can see, there's about $1.6 million worth of debt in the sewer fund, and you have cash reserves of just under $800,000 in there as well. So you do have some cash reserves, but obviously it's not like the water operations where you have significantly more cash than the debt out there. But that gives you a kind of a snapshot picture of where you're at with your cash reserves compared to your outstanding bonds for sewer. Looking at the electric fund for KMU here, once again, also supported by the ratepayers. There were increases in rates in 2018, basically adjusted the monthly charges with a decrease in the per kilowatt hour used charges as well, but you still achieved an overall increase in the rates. On top of that, there was a transfer of about $66,000 for the electric fund, and you had net income in the electric fund of $661,000 prior to any pension entries that we did, which also impacted it by about $1,900 as well. So KMU continues to be providing a lot of additional resources for the city out there, but those resources are nice because it allows the KMU to essentially loan money to the various other funds of the city, so that you can do some of those projects without having to go out and bond for those, which is great to see. You're using the electric fund right now for what you need. The key here is that as you can see on the depreciation side, that green bar on here, it is a very small piece of the overall expenses for the electric fund. But as the city continues to grow and expand, and as you need to move services into the various pieces of the industrial park and things like that, your expenses are going to increase, just related to depreciation and things like that. So having the additional cash reserves out there of KMU in the electric operations, it is a good thing, because it's allowing you to be able to do those projects and not have to bond for those things. And you guys are well aware of it, but if you have any types of repairs or maintenance related to anything electrical, those can get very costly in a hurry for the city. Similar to the other enterprise funds, once again, we're just comparing the bonds or the outstanding debt to the cash reserves. As I mentioned, very significant cash reserves in KMU compared to just over $14,000 in bonds out there. And as I mentioned, though, those cash reserves are getting put to good use. It's the advances to the EDA, the capital projects, and those various funds like that. So you're using those resources that you've accumulated in KMU for good purposes.
Chris?
Yes.
This is Dan Rexigal, a city councilman. Is there any issue with a fund, like with the state at all, if it gets too healthy? Is there anyone to, from the state auditor's office to say, like, your electric fund, I mean, it's really healthy. Are we going to run into any trouble there, or is that's an okay thing to run up the surplus on that?
Typically in your enterprise funds, the state auditor's office is not going to provide a ton of scrutiny to those with having reserves like you are. You're more apt to get scrutiny from the state auditor's office if you're running continual deficits in your enterprise funds. So having the reserves is fine. I think the key to this is with Mark and And the city council is making sure you have some type of a plan, whether it's increases in projects, you're putting it to good use. You're not just sitting on this stack of money in KMU for rainy days. The city council has a plan for it. It's growth. It's being able to loan money to other funds, which is providing a benefit. It's economic development. It's those types of things. So you're not going to get a ton of scrutiny from the state auditor's office for that. As I mentioned, if you're running continual deficits, you're more apt to get the scrutiny on the state auditor side.
Very good, thank you.
And I think that reserve went up this last year because of a dividend. I don't think that's normal growth. So I think it's like a one-time $300,000 or $400,000 dividend that we got through CMPAS.
Yep.
And I think like that's not normal. We're not going to have that year over year.
Yep.
And the utility does have some big projects like that water tower painting that is at least 250 to 300,000. So, it's not a normal kind of thing year after year from what I recall, without seeing everything right now. But I believe a lot of that went up because of that dividend.
The only reason I bring it up is because I remember years ago when the state ran into budget trouble in the schools, so we're sitting on money, and so the state said, well, since you're not using it, we'll take it back. And so I just want to make sure we don't run into that issue where they say, well, hey, we're running into expenses for coronavirus. Why don't you pony up from your electric fund? That's what I'm concerned about.
But this is, it's actually good timing of this. Not that I expect, it gives us some cushion more than we would normally have, and probably a lot of cities like us have. So it's a good thing, but this is not a normal thing that happens every year. They don't run that kind of, if they did, we'd be doing something wrong and rates would be too high or whatever. So this is more of a one-time thing where we had a big dividend and it pushed the reserve up. What they decided to do with that money was put it in reserve in the short term, but that could be used and may be used for the water tower painting. It's just, I kind of asked them to put it in reserve, especially looking down the short term road a little bit here because, we may be short tax collection wise somewhat. Thank God we're not dependent on sales tax,
Right.
But it just is a safety thing more than anything else. So.
And to be honest, on the reserve question, if the city was sitting on those types of reserves in your general fund, then you would be probably receiving some additional scrutiny. And kind of going back to the question about the schools back when they had the last economic downturn, that was out there when schools got a lot of scrutiny on that, as they were sitting on it in their general fund. And the city's not sitting on a ton of extra reserves in the general fund where looks like you've been, increasing your property taxes and then just sitting on the money. So being that it's in KMU and in an enterprise fund, you should be okay with those reserves.
And the electric fund is there because KMU, because we run our own electric.
Yeah.
What is that rare? Are we kind of unique in having
a municipal
electric?
No, there's tons of municipal electrics.
Okay.
Even in smaller towns, just in Southeast, St. Charles, Spring Valley. There's, Casson. So no, there's still, and nationwide, there's a lot of them still actually.
But cities that don't do that, they don't get a fund like this. So or do they?
No, the only thing is they may get franchise fees from like Excel, but it's nothing like this.
But this is a great benefit for the city of Kenyon to have, this fund that can.
Yes.
That can help. Yep.
No, it is a good thing to have. In a normal year, we'll have a reserve. It won't be anything close to this or, a net income, but it is a good thing to have. Now, when you have a disaster happen though, then too, that's a double-edged kind of thing, but no, I think it's a good thing. There have been very few cities that have them nationally that ever sold them, because they're a good thing, and they give us, the residents like them, they like our ability to respond quickly, and all the perks that we can kind of do that we wouldn't have if we had Excel or somebody else.
Okay, very good.
Excuse me, Mark. This is Joe. I think you may have a couple of people in the waiting room waiting to come into the meeting.
All right, yeah, you know what, let me go, it's not prompting me here, so I'm gonna turn, I don't know, if you wanna keep going, I think everybody's got a copy of this.
Okay,
Chris, I'm gonna go out of this for just a second here.
okay, that sounds good. I'll continue on. If anybody has any questions as we go, just kind of raise your hand, things like that. So,
I have a question, Chris.
yes.
In all these slides, you talk about a pension effect. And like on the sewer fund, there's a $651 decrease to net position pension effect. What is the pension effect?
So back in, I think it was 2015, if I have my years correct, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, required all local governments to record a proportionate share of any pension plans that they belong to that are underfunded or potentially even overfunded. If they're overfunded, you'd get an asset, but in this case, you're getting a liability on your books that would represent the city's proportionate share of that liability if the liability was going to be called, essentially. And each year we have to record that and adjust it to the reports that we get from the Minnesota Public Employees Retirement Association. So, and as I mentioned, we include that on there, even though it's not a very large piece of it, because back in 2016 and 17, when there were some really large drastic swings in that liability, it was a very significant impact to your operations of your funds. In one of the funds that have the most potential impact for negative ramifications related to that is going to be your liquor fund, because if your liquor fund shows losses in 2 of 3 years, it becomes a lot of additional administrative work for the city, because you need to be able to essentially prove that the city should continue those operations. And it involves public hearings and those types of things as well. So that's why we started including on that, because back in 16 and 17, there were some very significant adjustments related to that pension liability.
Okay. I do have a general comment when we get all said and done here about what the COVID is going to do to all these charts.
Okay, sounds good. So if we want to look at it, if you have the PowerPoint in front of you, it's going to be slide 41. And this is looking at the liquor operations for the city. And we're just about done with the slides. I know it's a pretty lengthy presentation. And for the liquor operations for 2019, you did have a net income before the transfers out in some of the pension entries as well, of just under $52,000. So the liquor fund this last year had a pretty good year, which is great to see. In 2019, and this makes the 5th year in a row, the liquor operations were able to transfer another $20,000 out of the fund for miscellaneous capital projects and operations of the city. So coming from my side on the audit side, the liquor operations is doing exactly what it should be doing. It's generating excess money so that you can transfer it out and use it for something else, which is what we want to see. And then as similar to the other ones, the pension effects for the liquor operations was just over $1,200 this last year as well. If we go to slide 42, this is looking at the gross profit percentages, or what the gross profit has been doing for the liquor operations. In 2019, your gross profit for the liquor fund was about 34%. That was a slight decline of about 1% from 2018. And when we compare that to what the statewide averages for city or for municipal operations that have both on sale and off sale, you are running about 5% lower than the state average, or at least for out of state communities. The hard part with this is I'm not able to break it down or get the data to really tell me where's the primary revenue sources in these various operations, because on-sale operations are going to have a significantly higher gross profit margin than what off-sale was. On-sale operations, those gross profits are generally going to be a lot closer to 50% or more, where if you have just off-sale, that's going to be a lot closer. That's going to be down closer to the 25, 26% type range. So you're basically kind of right in the middle of that. So, you know, the big thing there is just to continue to watch. If that continues to slide down, the city may just have to continue to look at that and say, are we pricing the liquor properly, those types of things? Is there something else that's causing our supply cost to continue to increase as well? Looking at the next slide for the cash reserves for the liquor fund. So at the end of the year, the liquor fund still owed KMU about $24,000, a little about $24,500. But the liquor operations are continuing to make those payments. So during 2019, they repaid just over $13,000 on that advance from KMU. So you're still maintaining steady cash reserves of about $115,000 in the liquor fund. The next one, looking at storm sewer. This one is one that's been really tricky for a lot of communities over the last several years. It's how are we properly charging out the cost of storm sewer to the customers? And you've had years where you've had positive net income, and you've had a couple of years where you've had losses in storm sewer as well. The last rate increase was in 2017 for storm sewer. And you do have depreciation of about $32,000 out there. Your overall net loss for 2019 was about $8,000 in 2019. So you are covering a portion of your depreciation, just not all of it as you are in other funds. And then just a real small piece, the pension side of it was only about a $203 impact to the storm sewer fund. Looking as we have at the other enterprise funds, what's our cash reserves compared to the bonds outstanding? You do have some significant cash reserves in here compared to your outstanding bonds of just over $73,000. But that's similar to the other funds. That's not a bad thing. That allows you to do the repairs, the maintenance, and those types of things to the stormwater system within the city without having to bond for all the various pieces that do need to happen throughout the year. So looking now, any questions on any of the financial things before I go on to just these last couple of slides? I think, Tom, you had a question, or if you wanted to answer, ask now, or if you wanted to wait till I was done with the last couple.
Well, I have a quick question on the bonds outstanding and cash investments. I got to think that knowing what banks are paying out on cash investments, we're earning a lot less in interest than we are paying out for bonds. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Then
yes.
Why?
In general, yes.
Why are we continuing to basically lose money on the whole thing? We're making less money on what we have than what we're paying out for bonds. Why don't we pay off the bonds?
And really the biggest driver of that is, do you want to, if you want to say, eat away at those cash reserves that you have built up over time? Because that is, you're using those cash reserves up, and that limits some of the, if you want to say, the flexibility in that cushion in feeling comfortable that the city has really worked hard and built up over time.
Okay. Well, yeah. All right. Thank you. I just had a, that as far as what I talked about earlier, this whole COVID thing is really going to throw all towns into a major loop as far as all these charts with net profit, especially in the liquor store and that kind of stuff. And is there anything that the city of Kenyon should be doing knowing that moving forward?
I think the areas where we're going to see the biggest impact is, I don't remember who said it, but the city doesn't have any sales tax. So you are, if you want to say, you're sheltered from the impacts of that side. We do work with some communities that have significant sales tax that they count on for various things. And they're really having to address their budget because of that. They're going to have some significant shortfalls because of it. So you are at least protected from that aspect of it. I think the other things that you are going to be having to look at and face is, what does the parks and recreation side for the city of Kenyon look like? Are you going to open up the swimming pool? Have you started to make plans for that? Some communities especially up here in the Twin Cities, they've already made the decision. They're not even opening their swimming pools or anything like that for 2020, for this summer already. So that's going to cause a significant decrease in some of their user fees that they would historically have had in the past. Now, granted, they're going to have some decreases in the personnel side of it because they had a lot of temporary summer help for running those operations. But usually the user fees that were generated were going to be more than what the cost of operating those are, just the nature of it. Otherwise, why are you necessarily doing those? But I think on the other side, as Mark had mentioned previously as well, you are probably going to see a temporary slowdown in the timing or the amount of the property tax payments that you're going to receive. At the end of the year, you're probably going to receive the total amount that you're expecting, or very close to it. You could see your delinquents increase a little bit at the end of the year, but you are going to have a slower payment stream on that compared to what you've had in the past. On top of, and then when you start looking at the expenditure side of it, I don't think the city was significantly interrupted as far as needing to purchase significant new equipment for whether it's hosting meetings virtually or ensuring that employees could work remotely, those types of things. We've heard from a few of our clients that they had to go out and purchase laptops so that employees could work remotely. And what ended up happening is you had all of these, both local governments, private businesses, when they had to pivot on a dime essentially to have a remote workforce, is the stockpile of laptops and those types of machines that were available on the market decreased very quickly. And what ended up happening is they ended up having to pay premium prices for essentially refurbished equipment. The city of Kenyon doesn't have to necessarily face those types of things, but there are going to probably be some additional costs related to cleaning supplies, especially for police and fire, making sure you have the proper protective equipment and those types of things. So you are going to have some increases in expenditures related to that. If you would have any employees that would end up going on that Emergency Family Medical Leave Act because they've contracted the virus, you have to continue to pay those wages and those costs and things like that. So you could potentially have some of those additional costs that are out there, but some of those are going to be on an as-needed basis as things progress throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Otherwise, I have just a couple of slides left, and I'll let you guys get back to the rest of your meeting here tonight. This next one, looking at just some accounting standards that are going to be coming out over the next couple of years. For both Statement 83 and 84, those were supposed to be applicable for 2019. However, the GASB Board, of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, just issued a new standard here within the last week that basically said that all of these statements from basically 83 through 94 are going to get a delay of a year because local governments are having a significant issue with trying to make sure that they can accumulate all the information to be able to properly implement the standards. Both 83 and 84, I am not expecting a significant impact to the city. However, 87 will have some additional note disclosures and some additional legwork that we'll have to work with Mark and Sue on to make sure that they're properly getting reflected and recorded for the city as well. And that Statement 87 is just related to lease accounting. And then finally, looking at just kind of the overall conclusion here is, as we mentioned, the general fund, you are healthy. You're just over 6 months worth of reserves. in the general fund. The enterprise funds, with the exception of sewer and stormwater, are profitable prior to the transfers, even after transfers. Your liquor fund, positive net income, you're continuing to pay down the advance from KMU, as well as transferring an additional $20,000 out. There was positive fund balance in all of the funds, which is always good to report. There was the grant passed through in the EDA, so you did have some significant increases in the revenues and the expenditures from there, but they were basically just a wash. And then in total, when we looked at all of the various enterprise funds, it was just over $4,500 in total impact of pension in the accounting that we had for pensions during 2019. So as I mentioned, not a significant impact this last year, but in the past that has been, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in total in years past. So hopefully the impact of COVID and those types of things, we know that what they've done to the markets out there. However, the pension plans are invested in a few other things. So hopefully we're not going to see the drastic decreases again in pension in the investment assets for the pension fund this next year as well. But there is that potential impact out there. So I'm open to any other questions or comments or anything like that of any members of the council as well.
Currently, there isn't anybody that has any questions, so we'll ask one time for Chris. Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we will move on.
Just a comment. What's the significance of the bicycle riders in the front?
That is that's a marketing thing that CLA came out with a couple of years ago, just to basically kind of represent that, you know, it's everybody trying to move in the one direction together, and that's just the image they decided to pick was the bicycle for that.
Okay, why not take a car?
It's more green to use a bike.
Okay, all right. Could be a Prius. That was my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And Chris, I do want to thank you for the time. It was a very good presentation. And then this is the second time I heard it, but you had it down pretty well, Pat, the same as you did before. Appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. And Mark, please let me know if any other anybody else comes up with a question after the council meeting or anything like that. I'm more than happy to answer any of those questions as well, if anybody has any as they read the financial statements or anything like that. Okay, thank you. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we'll move. Go ahead. Whoever that was, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, he said thank you. Okay, sorry about that. We'll move on to engineering. We'll start with the Kenyon Business Park project status update.
Great, boys, keep her to 10 minutes, man.
Make it 7.
Okay, 7.
All right, well, we've got 2 items on the agenda, the business park and then Red Wing. And Derek, I don't know, you want me to take the business park and then you can have Red Wing?
Sure, sounds good.
Just keep it short and sweet here. So in your packet is a memo. And on the business park, it's really just more of an informational update. There's no action needed tonight by the council. We did, at the special council meeting 1 week ago, we reviewed the plans and specifications. They were complete and ready for consideration by the council. Council did approve the plans and specifications. It includes a base bid plus 2 alternates that are included in the bid form. And those are currently advertised, and we've got a bid opening scheduled for Wednesday, May 27th. And then we'll be presenting the results of that bid opening at the regular meeting on June 9th. So everything is looking good. We are still finalizing the easements we need with Traxler and with Festal Farms. And I know on your agenda tonight under the legal portion of the agenda, the city attorney is going to have some comments on that. So I won't get into any more details here, other than to say that right now the easements are not in hand, but it's not a concern at this point for accepting bids. We certainly are good to go ahead with receiving bids and while we continue to work on those easements. So really with that, that's about the whole of the update on the business park. As I mentioned, no action is needed from council tonight, just available for any questions if you have them.
Anybody
So we
have
don't
any
have anybody waiting in line to buy those parcels.
No, not yet.
All right.
It's too early in the game yet for that. Is there any questions for city engineer to answer?
On the business park.
Yeah, on the business park. There isn't, then we'll move on to Red Wing. Derek?
How about that? 2 minutes on the business park. So Derek, now you get 2 minutes on Red Wing.
New record. Have my mic here. So yeah, just a quick update for Red Wing Avenue here today. On your in the council packet, we included the last resident newsletter that went out to residents. They probably received it early last week. Basically, what's going on with it? They've obviously started with work. The northern half of the project pavement's pulled off. Just today, they started on the underground sanitary sewer and just got started on a little bit of the water main, basically between 3rd Street and Home Street. I will point out what I had in my little memo here to everyone is that these construction newsletter updates, if you log on to the project website right on the home page, there's an option there to add your information. So if there's anyone on the council that is interested in receiving those at the same time that residents do, you can just sign up for that, and that'll basically be the only information that'll be sent out through that email. There isn't any junk or anything like that sent out with it. It's just project related updates. Any questions concerning the Red Wing project?
Or how are things going so far? Anything surprising, or it going the way you thought it would?
Yeah, I think it's going about as well as what we could have hoped. I don't know if you guys have heard. There's a couple of utility issues during that first week of work. Cut power to about half a town at one point, and also snagged a gas service. But that kind of comes with the territory on these types of projects. Realistically, I'm not seeing any type of cause for concern. It seems to be progressing normally, and no surprises so far.
Can't hear you there, Tom.
Tom, we can't hear you.
I had my mute on, sorry. Most of the trees have been cut down. In regards to the stumps, do we plan on, are we gonna dig those out? Are we gonna mulch those out? I mean, how are the stumps gonna be removed?
They're going to pull most of those out with the backhoe. There's some of them that they have to grind the stumps down below the surface, but most of them are going to be pulled out with the backhoe, probably around the same time that they're installing the sewer and water services.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question that popped up today, this afternoon, from a citizen. And they were wondering, is Adam, Derek, and Joe, are you guys all getting paid out of this whole project, or do you submit your fees different, on an hourly basis or so?
It's submitted on an hourly basis in terms of what's being spent here right now. Realistically, Adam is the only one that's working full time out there. So the only fees that you see submitted from, say, me would be if I, have to go out to, check something out. If there's some type of issue with construction, I'll make a quick stop out, but that's more on a part-time basis. And it's basically the same thing with Joe. But I mean, technically, yes, there's all separate fees for that, but that's all worked into, that original estimate that we had sent originally.
Yeah, the short answer is it's hourly. So the hours that we spend on the project, we get paid for each hour, but it's all within that project budget that we had presented to you before the construction started.
Okay, to me that's understanding, but that individual that asked me that question will more than likely be asking Adam somewhere into the near future on it. So I just want to know from my own point of view if I was correct or not. So, fine. Okay. Let's see here. Where are we at here? Is there any more then on the Red Wing project? Anybody have any more questions or anything on it? If there isn't, we will continue on. And we can go on to legal end of it. And City Attorney Scott Riggs, are you ready to stand up to the podium and go for it?
I will. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll jump in quickly and keep it to less than 2 minutes as well. Keep it moving here. We have 2 easements we're trying to acquire for the business park project. Both Mark and Derek have met with the property owners and did come up with some terms that we have been working into or 2 different easement agreements. I did have a conversation today with Ann Traxler. I think we have that fairly well in order. There will be some questions for the council to decide. Tonight's not the night for that, but we'll have to figure out, there are some requests being made for additional compensation beyond the city providing these or getting these easements for consideration of no assessments for the project. So we will have to likely come back to the council in the next couple of weeks to have a discussion regarding that. There was also requests relative to either indemnification or insurance relative to both easements. I've had conversations with the League of Cities on that, and working with one of the attorneys there, we're trying to come up with some language that will accomplish that so we can get the easements finalized. So they're work in progress. They're coming close to conclusion, but there will be a couple questions the council likely will have to address in the next couple of weeks.
Mark, do you have something to bring in on that?
The only other thing as far as the easements is under legal is set a date for a special meeting. Scott, what is your thought on that? I mean, do you think you're at a point with Traxler's? Because I think with Festival Farms, we were pretty much, in agreement that we could do something in a week, or do they still have to get back to you, or what's?
Yeah, I think the idea would be is by later this week, we'll have a good idea of where we are, and we can decide if the meeting's necessary next week or the following week. So I think we can leave it open-ended and possibly have you poll the council and see if there's a need for a meeting, in the next 2 weeks. I don't think we're ready to call one right now. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that sounds good.
Good.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
Anything else that you have, Scott?
No, that's it. That's it.
Well, thank you very much on that part of it. We'll move right along then. We can go on to
Finance plan?
yeah, I was going to say my
Or get ahead of myself, your update on the ambulance garage. Chief, I don't know
Yes.
what you have for that.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. This is Lee, the police chief, if you can't see me. Just an update on the retrofitting of the old ambulance building to the new police department. It's coming along well. I did take some updated photos and I sent those to the mayor and to the city administrator. The floor has been done.
Council had.
Oh, the council has, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So
Yeah.
Mark has sent those. The new front doors put in, the cabinets are installed, the walls are up. The electrician's gonna come next week and finish up some wiring. Speaking of the contractors, I think the inside of the building should be done in about a month, and then they'll start on the outside of the building. So it seems to be coming along well, and I don't know, do you have any questions of me about that?
I don't. I was in there with you a couple of days ago and starting to shape.
It's coming along well.
Mhm.
So, yep, there's the update. I know we'll have to talk about some signage for the front. They still make the desks that we have, which is nice. So we'll need to get a couple more of those. But other than that, things are going well. So thank you for your help on that too.
I'm nodding my head.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions somebody has on the garage? If it isn't, we will continue on to B, which is the Red Wing Avenue Business Park bond sale with George Nixon, Northland Securities. And Joe, are you, or George, are you on here? believe
I
you are.
am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not up in the woods like Joe or at the ball game like Scott. I got to figure out how to have a fancy background. But we've got a couple items for you this evening for the combined bond issue. We've talked about this before. It's a common bond issue for 3 different projects. The Red Wing Avenue improvements is one. The sewer improvements, the sewer lining project is the second project, and the third is the business park. And because those projects, albeit the sewer lining project is already done, but the 3 projects are close enough in timeline, and we've talked that it's efficient, if you will, from a cost of issuance standpoint, to group these projects together into one common financing. So that's the finance plan that is put together for you. There's 2 items for consideration tonight. And we're not selling bonds tonight, just to say here in the beginning. We're scheduled actually for June 23rd. That's not a regular council meeting date for you, but it would be a special city council meeting towards the latter part of June. That timeline just syncs up with after you receive the construction bids on the business park project, and then allowing time for the resizing of the bonds. Right now we're dealing with estimates, of course, on the business park. So it just allows that period of time for resizing of the bonds, getting the bond rating in place, et cetera, before the bonds are actually sold. So action item number 1 is a municipal advisory agreement. For this transaction, we at Northland Securities are serving as your municipal advisor. Role will be, like you've seen thus far, working with you on structuring the debt, reviewing the financing alternatives, different structures, et cetera. Working with the city on preparing the bond official statement, which is the marketing piece that we show to potential investors, potential investment banks that would be bidding on your bonds. Working with your staff on the assignment of a bond rating. So Mark and I have talked about that, and we are anticipating working with Standard & Poor's on the assignment of a rating for this bond issue. Taking the bids and then eventually working on the closing of the financing. So that's all laid out in that municipal advisor agreement. So typically we get that in front of a municipality for each bond issue. It's not a blanket agreement for a period of time, but rather on a project by project basis. So that's one item, Mayor and Council, is the municipal advisor agreement. The second item for consideration tonight is the resolution that sets the bond sale for June 23rd. And that has been put together by Mr. Riggs's company at Kennedy and Graven. The resolution, the main purpose of that is to cite the different statutory references that, or the different state statutes rather, that the bonds will be issued under. And then it selects a date, just so you, the city council, know that looking ahead for June 23rd, that's the date that we have set to take financing bids in the morning, and then I'll present those bids that same evening to you on a special meeting. So that's the overview. Mayor and Council, I can certainly help address any questions.
On the number 2, that's the finance plan.
Yes, the finance plan is included in your packet. That is a document that goes over the structure of the bonds, it talks about the timing, talks about the rating of the bonds, et cetera. These are, I didn't want to, I can certainly address more of those questions for you tonight, but in the interest of keeping my presentation brief, that really goes over the structure in a just in a summary fashion here. The Red Wing bonds, we've got those structured over a 20-year financing term. The Second Avenue or the street lining project, sewer street lining project, financed over a 15-year term, and then the business park structured over a 20-year term. And certainly that's information we've shared with you at previous meetings. But one thing I'll certainly say in terms of the market in general, the bond market, is things are trending quite positive from a borrowing standpoint. I know the question arose earlier about investments versus borrowing, but from the issuance standpoint, we're butting up against those historical lows again for borrowing rates. So that's certainly trending in the right direction for Kenyon when you issue these bonds, because you'll fix a rate for 20 years. And we're certainly hopeful that the rates remain at these low levels. Mayor, council members, any other questions?
George, just to refresh my memory, if I remember right, the Second Street project will be paid for out of sewer funds, and the Red Wing project will basically be a wash because another one is coming off. And so the only one that really affects the levy is the business park.
Yes, good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Certainly a lot of work went into working with your staff on structuring the bonds to minimize the tax levy impact. And that's correct. The debt related to the City Hall project, the levy associated with that is continued, if you will, towards the Red Wing project, so that there's not an additional impact, if you will, on the taxpayers. Certainly there's utility revenues coming in to pay on the Red Wing project, as well as special assessments. As you noted, the sewer lining project paid for out of the sewer fund. And the business park project is one that, working with Mark and Sue on coming up with a structure for that, again, to minimize the levy impact there, we've got utility revenues coming in to pay approximately 60% of the financing, with the other 40% approximately coming in on the levy. So, and again, that levy component we're trying to minimize. That's at approximately $35,000 to $40,000 of new levy on the business park. So, so overall, across the board between the three projects, nice opportunity to structure these three bonds with minimal impact on the taxpayers.
And just to clarify that a little bit more, Mark, it's not really even the business park as it is the infrastructure that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. I mean, so to say it's for the business park is even a little bit misleading. Right. It's more to improve the business park and have infrastructure improvements that needed to happen anyway.
And it's only actually half of the cost of it. Because we're getting, that big grant from the state. Yeah, exactly.
I've been clarifying that with quite a few residents who, you're pouring all this money into the business park. No, these are things that we were going to have to pay for. Right. And a small chunk of that is, the actual blacktopping and putting the street, in place. The rest of it is the infrastructure that we need to keep up for the city, regardless of whether we did that project or not.
Yeah, this is why I've been going back and changing everything, every reference I can, resolutions, not so much minutes, but business park / utility extension project, because that's what it is.
Ties together, yeah.
And I think that sort of got lost a little bit just with streamlining all this stuff together. And we're talking about different things going into this financing. And then I realized a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that we need to get utility extension back in that title because it's half of the cost. Exactly. So good. That was a good point there. Okay.
Well, I will move approval of the municipal advisory service agreement between the city of Kenyon and Northland Securities.
I'll second it.
I do have a question, and this still is exempt from the resolution, is that correct?
Yeah, they're two different motions.
Yeah, okay. Now,
The finance plan, I don't think has to be adopted, does it, George?
That does not. That's
just
for
a-
reference only.
okay,
No, but
Then what-
you do need a roll call vote on both of these items, so.
Okay.
okay, how are we gonna, you came up with, there's been a motion made and second, and that was the motion was made by Dan and second by whom?
John,
John, okay, for the municipal advisory agreement, and we have to do this on a one-to-one basis, so we will start with Dan, since you're right here.
Aye.
Aye, how about you, John?
aye.
Okay, Tom,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
and Doug. Ayes pass. Okay, we got that part of it done. Where do we move on then to the,
Resolution 2020.
okay, that's what I was wondering. Now, does that involve that date of Tuesday, the 23rd? Is that all acceptable with everybody on it? Okay. George, you have any questions on it, or Scott?
I have none, no.
Nope, I have nothing to add either, Mayor.
Okay, then we will go with, somebody has to come up with a resolution 2020-13. I'll make the motion on that one to pass it.
And I will second it.
Okay, Richard is brought in a second. Okay, does this have to be just,
Once again, roll call.
That's correct. Roll call vote.
yeah, that, I'm sorry about that. Okay, we'll, again, we will go with John,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
and Doug. All in favor, say aye. We're already got it. So ayes pass.
Aye. Again.
This is a little different. Okay. Is there anything else? I believe that's the extent of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the finance plan, the whole works, and the resolution 2013. Okay, we can go on.
Thanks,
to-
George.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you very much.
We'll be in contact soon.
Okay, don't
Check
forget,
in the mail.
yeah, don't forget the special meeting now, Tuesday, the 23rd at 7 PM. Mark it in your calendars.
January 23rd.
Uh,
I mean, June
January,
23rd.
June 23rd.
Whoa.
Okay,
January.
June
Yeah.
23rd. I was trying to
23rd,
say
right?
not May 23rd, but June 23rd.
okay. Well, we go on to new business then. Approve hiring of municipal swimming pool employees.
Looks like a good group of kids. All
Yeah.
move approval.
Now, this is tentative because we may not be open.
Yeah, it's tentative right now, Richard. That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
But we're going forward with it open.
Yeah, we're moving ahead. So
Okay, okay. There's been a motion made by Richard, second by Dan, to approve hiring of municipal swimming pool employees. All in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes pass. We didn't hear you, John and Tom, but,
I had a question on that.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're gonna hire these people for the pool. What if we don't open the pool? Do we still pay them?
No,
So, okay, so it's a hourly thing here. If we open for 10 hours in August, they're gonna be paid for 10 hours in August, and that's it.
Yeah, now the manager would, is gonna get paid for some of it, for what she's doing right now. The assistant manager maybe a little bit, but the rank and file lifeguards, no, they'll only be paid and hired or paid if we're able to open.
Okay,
But we want to open, we want to.
then I agree. Thank you.
Hey, guys, I'm sorry on that, but we didn't get the sound back, but sometimes if you raise your hand, at least we'll kind of follow you along, and make sure. And that, because I did not hear you. I'm very sorry for that, so.
Okay, I raised my hand.
Yeah, okay, sure. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we got the swimming pool out of the way, which we're gonna go forward with, I know. We'll go to number 2, which is approve a Memorial Day parade for May the 25th of 2020. Now, in your packet, it does say there is not definitely a route, but I do know this much, that they're gonna try to cover as much of the city as possible. And that, I know one place that they definitely will be going by, and that is the Sunset Home. But there will not be, I can tell you this, anything down at the cemetery this year. So we need,
And will all be wearing masks?
well, that's everybody's.
And do they have to have them donated?
Richard, say that again, please.
I said, will they all be wearing masks? And do they have to have them donated?
That's up to the individual to find out where the masks are at and if they want to wear them or not. But it's not
Okay.
necessary. Richard, understand, are you just kidding or are you playing along here? The parade itself is not going to be, packed. In other words, what is going to take place is golf carts, that sort of thing, and it will, social distancing will be
In place.
worked.
Okay.
So
All right.
will it be like you'll be leading the route?
Yes.
Okay.
The question was, would we as the police department be leading the route? And yes, we told them we'll work with them. Anything we can do, we will help them do. So it won't be a problem.
All right.
Well, I'll move approval of the Memorial Day parade permit.
I'll second.
Okay, Tom did. Okay, all in favor of the permit for the Memorial Day parade, say aye.
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 Yeah, I think we heard everybody. I say aye too. So ayes pass. Okay, moving on.
FYI, I did not second that. I don't know who did, but it wasn't me.
John did.
John
Okay.
did, yeah.
All right. I said Tom, sorry.
Was that League of Municipal Cities?
Yeah, League of Minnesota Cities.
Yeah, liability
Insurance
coverage.
trust liability coverage waiver. So this is a annual action that the council has to take or consider. And that is, the city council has to designate whether to waive the insurance liability limits. State statutes limit a city's liability to a maximum of $500,000 per claimant or 1.5 million per occurrence. These apply whether a claim is against the city, against the individual officer or employer, against both. Cities can choose to waive the state liability limits. And in doing so, cities can purchase additional insurance coverage up to $2 million annually. And there's a memo in the packet. The city has not in the past opted to waive this and has just kept the state limits. So that's how it's gone every other year up till now, but we have to go through this exercise every year, so. And Scott, I don't know if you have anything on this. I should always probably put this under your section, but I never do.
Yeah, the only thing to add is Mark explained it very well. The city has never in the past waived this liability cap, and I would not recommend doing that at this time either.
Okay, I make a motion that we not waive the liability cap.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Did you get it?
I'm in favor.
Yeah, a liability cover wager. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Ayes pass. Okay. Then we got, what else we got here? Is that administration policy 13?
Administrative Policy 31 dealing with
Yeah.
COVID-19 preparedness plan, and this is basically just a template plan that we tweak to cover reopening. It does not change anything that we're doing per se, really right now that we already haven't been doing. And it doesn't change when city facilities would open, but it's a plan that talks about safety for employees and facilities in a nutshell. It came from our safety consultants through Minnesota Municipal Utility Association, which KMU belongs to, but the city also uses that for all our safety programs. So it's recommended, and this was recommended by the League of Minnesota Cities, that cities adopt some type of policy. So we kind of took, I think the policy that came to a lot of cities, I think it's pretty consistent with what our other cities are going to adopt. So,
Yeah. So that's just an advisory,
well, basically, yeah.
basic information. So,
Yep.
okay, does anybody have any questions on that? If not, we will move on to other business.
Well, you have to adopt it.
I don't see it.
But it doesn't say motion carried, you're correct. But this does need to be adopted by the council.
I make a motion that we adopt the Administrative Policy 31 COVID-19 preparedness plan for city employees and facilities.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion been made and second on Administration Policy 31 COVID-19 preparedness plan for city employees and facilities. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes pass. Okay, did I miss something? Something
I don't
else
think
here?
that's it.
Oh, yeah, no wonder I'm on there. I see it right here. Okay. I guess we can go on with other business then. And a schedule of upcoming meetings will be KMU meeting will be Wednesday, May the 20th at 6 p.m. A regular council meeting will be Tuesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. And I hope everybody is here at that time. And number 3, there is an ad on here, and that is a recognition for Officer Mike that has been here for 8 years. Everybody, I believe, got a letter, but I don't know about the televised end of it that they have read. So Lee has volunteered to read the letter that Mike sent to the council. And if you wish to go with that, and then after I have something else I'd like to make a comment on.
Sure. This was dated the 12th. It says, letter to the city of Kenyon. Dear Mr. Mayor, City Council, Chief Showlander, Administrator Volsing, and City of Kenyon. I know we're living in unprecedented times and I cannot physically be in front of you to tell you this in person. As you know, I put in my resignation with the Kenyon Police Department. I've had an in-depth conversation with my family, Chief Lee, about my decision. It was a very tough decision to make, but I know it was the right decision for my family and for me. I wanted to say thank you to Chief Lee for letting me be part of the Kenyon Police family. Chief Lee has always supported me in what I do as a police officer. Thank you for listening to me and for understanding. Thank you, Mayor Hankey and Mr. Volsing for always supporting me as an individual person, police officer, and friend. Thank you, City Council, for always supporting the police department and its direction to serve the community. Thank you, all departments within the city. You are all not only co-workers, but have grown to become friends. It has been my honor and privilege to serve the community of Kenyon. I hope I have done well in serving the community. I have come to learn and love the people within. I will miss you all. Who knows? This may not be forever, and one day I may have the opportunity to serve Kenyon again in the distant future. I will be taking this time to self-reflect and spend more time with my family. Until then, I bid you all good luck and thank you. He ends it with, be kind to someone and signs it Officer Mike Wynn. Very nice letter.
Yes,
Here's what I'm looking at. Mike has spent 8 years here. Even though he was part-time, a good amount of that time, he was literally full-time. He did get to meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of following that he had. And I'm thinking it's only right. Now, Chief Lee did give him his badge. I'm looking at it this way. What do you people think, council, that we get some kind of a plaque made that we can put that badge on, and somewhere, you know, with a little bit of recognition of some sort, and maybe in about 2 months, have Mike come here, Officer Mike come and present it to him.
Yeah, so here's how I would tell you to go with that. Not that we're gonna take any specific action on that tonight, but if the council's comfortable with that, basically we'll get a plaque made up, and Lee and I will work on that with Larry Taji, and we'll present it to him in, like you said, Mayor, and maybe in 2 months when everybody can, or as soon as we get everybody back together. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and we'll take care of that. So.
good.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I think it's well deserved for Mike.
I do too.
Yes,
We don't have to make a motion or
No,
anything on
no,
that. That's just, you're gonna
it's
go
really
with
not on
it.
the agenda,
Okay,
so.
okay. Then we'll go with council and staff general comments. And that, we'll start with, Tom, how about you? You got something to say?
No?
We'll get it going. How about you, John?
I'm sorry to see Mike leave. Not to sound too funny, but I won't have to worry about my dog anymore. But that's an inside joke between me and Mike.
Okay. Richard, how about you?
well, I'm just happy that everybody's staying safe and in good shape. Hopefully this will be over soon. I personally have my doubts, but that's neither here nor there. And that's all for my comments.
Okay, how about city engineer? I guess he is.
I have no comments, no further comments tonight. Thank you.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah, no, just nice to see everybody. Everybody stays safe, and hopefully we can see you in person soon.
Okay. I don't have anything either outside of the fact that I just hope this gets back, that we get back to normal real soon, and we can get up and running again. So, Mark, do you have anything to say in particular?
Just thank Mike for his service for the city, and also I think all our business owners and their diligent efforts to keep going, and whether the ones that are open that are swamped and the ones that aren't open or that are just starting to reopen. And Kaba, I just want to thank everybody for continuing to work together, and we'll get through this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chief Lee, we're going to bring you in too. Everybody's here.
I want to thank everyone for really practicing a lot of this stuff voluntarily. We, as the police department, have really had very minimal issues with the public. They're all pretty much practicing social distancing, and for the most part, people have been pretty positive and working together, which has always been one of my big perks of working and living in this small town. So thank you all for being a part of that.
Okay, anybody else have something that they wish to say? If not, we'll.
I don't think we're ever going to get back to normal. I think there's going to be a new normal.
That's probably true. There will be adjustments that are going to be more permanent.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay, we'll get on with the last one, the best one sometimes, and that's adjournment. So we need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
We have to do a roll call too, so we'll get this
A roll
right.
call?
Yeah, we're supposed to do roll calls on all of them. because it's a virtual meeting. So.
Okay, we should do that before. the
No,
adjournment?
just after the motion. second.
Okay, there's been a motion made for adjournment, and I'll second that one then. Richard, myself. All in favor of adjournment?
You gotta do roll
Aye.
call. So,
Oh, just,
sorry. You gotta do roll
We have to have a
call.
roll call?
Yep.
okay, I follow what you're saying. We gotta do a roll call vote, so. Tom?
Aye.
Tom, John?
Aye.
Richard?
I want to know what would happen if I said nay,
We'll be here all night.
Yeah, maybe.
but I'm saying yay.
Okay, Dan?
Aye.
Dan, did I ask you for your comments?
I had
I'm
none.
sorry.
No,
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
good.
Okay, and I'll say, let's go for adjournment. So adjournment we're going to do. Thank you for attending the council meeting on May the 12th of 2020.